Okay, the buzzkill is Sandy and Kathy are here with Roland Nutter, past selectman. He is now off the board. He's gonna give us a little background on his experience as a selectman, his overview of Pepperell, and just let us know how things have gone on your 3 years on the Board of Selectmen. Here's Roland. Take it away.
Well, thank you, ladies. Thank you for asking me to do this interview. I had actually served as a selectman in Orange for 2 terms. So prior to moving here, I had experience in doing this job. And of course, it was back in the 90s, so it's much different. Then you had the Board of Selectmen manage the town. You had an administrative assistant who was their day-to-day person to help them out. Today, but that's not really a good model because there's so much going on in every town that you need to have a professional management team in place, which is what we have today with a town administrator. And having gotten rid of some of our elected positions, such as the treasurer and the town clerk, you need to have people that are responsible. We don't have to look very far to see where towns who had an elected position there got the town in trouble. So we don't have to look very far for that. So we're on the right track there from professionalism of the town. You're talking about a $27 million business. Do you want it run by people who are part-time? No, of course not. You want it run by people who are here, day in and day out, not just somebody who comes in for a meeting and that's it. So so that's kind of my background. I served on the planning board back in Orange. Here I served on the EDEC, Economic Development Committee on town, on the patch board of directors. Obviously, I'm a business owner in town. Been on the PBA, which I think is, a critical part to this town because it's, when you think about, the things they do, the band concert, the Santa Fund, on all the scholarships and everything else, the goodwill it does. It's all about trying to make this a better town for all of us to live in. So it's been, an interesting, this is much more different experience for me on this one. We'll leave it at that and move on to our next question.
Okay, so the next question, while you brought up the PBA, we'll just jump to that question. Isn't it important for the town administrator and the PBA to have a working relationship?
And do they have one?
And do they have one?
Well, I think the previous town administrator was much more involved with the PBA than the current one. But I think that's probably because the current one, the existing board, you have members on the existing board who don't want that position to be involved, and it really is part of your whole economic engine for the town. So, there's 3 legs to the stool of the town. Okay, there's the town government, there's the businesses in town, and then there's the citizens. So you need to have a working relationship across those 3 boards. Those 3 groups all need to work together. And, can it be better? Well, I think, it could be a little better. It could, the current town administrator could be more involved as far as coming to more meetings and stuff like that. But he's still new. He's still trying to figure everything out in this town. So I think he'll get there. He definitely sees the need for economic development. I think he'll do a good job once he gets things kicked back off again. He wants to reconstitute the Economic Development Committee. I think that makes sense. But when you think about it, it's having that relationship with your business association, your businesses in town that help the government keep a pulse on what's going on and what are the things going on. I mean, if you look at, we have a lot of nice businesses in this town. We have actually a very active and vibrant business association, one that many other towns look at and say, we wish we could be like this. I work across 12 different towns, and Pepperell has the most active one. So it's interesting to see that, and you have to say why, because the business association is actively involved in the community. It's not just about networking, it's about making it a better place to live. So, and that's has to go hand in hand with the town government as well as the citizens in town.
Yeah. So would a selectman be welcome at the PBA?
Oh, yeah.
So it seems like that should be.
It's a pretty open environment. We have people who are non-business owners that are part of the PBA. So we have town officials who are part of the PBA. I mean, it's open to people who have the same concept of, we wanna build a better community.
I'm just a little concerned that, there's people on the board who don't see that that relationship needs to be had, is one that needs to develop and grow and worked on. Cause I would hope.
There
Yeah.
definitely appears to be individuals on the board who are, for lack of a better term, anti-PBA.
That's very discouraging to hear.
Is that because they're anti-growth or anti?
You'd have to ask them.
Why?
Oh, we
I
might.
don't know, I don't know exactly what their reasoning
Others,
is for some of these things. You know, it baffles me, quite honestly, because all the good things that are done by the PBA, you know, and all the good things that, you know, that are done for the community, it just doesn't make any sense to be.
Well, beyond anything else, I would see if a business did wanna come into town, the Board of Selectmen would have to be talking to the businesses in town to see how it fits into the whole community. Like you would be an essential part of the conversation with PBA,
Well,
with new
you
businesses
can have
coming in.
you can have a new business in town and never talk to the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah. But
Unless
the
you're-
Board of
unless
Selectmen
you're
should be
going-
welcoming.
The Board of Selectmen should be very welcoming,
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
But the only time the board's gonna get involved is if it's something that requires a license from us,
Mhm.
or they're gonna put it in a property that is non-conforming and they need to have a special permit from us.
Then it
through the
seems a
zoning.
little behind the eight ball.
Well, it is, but if you think about most businesses don't require a
I'm not
whole-
being
yeah.
critical.
No,
I'm just
and I don't
saying,
take it that
yep,
way.
Yep,
I
no,
don't take
not
it
at
that
all.
way, but,
No.
but getting back to your point, their first input's gonna be with the PBA, cause they're gonna like, okay, who are the other businesses in town and how do I connect and work with them? So the PBA is gonna be probably the first stop where they're gonna come to and join the PBA. And so if you've got your, you know, town also working with the PBA, then the town becomes familiar.
That's actually
How
where I was
can we
going.
help this business
Mhm.
grow?
That's where I was
Okay,
going
how
with
can
my
we
next
go?
question.
So
You're
it-
already there.
I'm already there, yeah.
Yep.
So it, you know, economic development is not just one person's responsibility, it's the whole community's responsibility. Just like public safety is the whole community's responsibility. We all have to look out for one another. We have to make sure that we're aware of what's going on in our community and help, you know, our police and our firemen wherever
Exactly.
possible.
But it starts with the leadership too.
Well, it definitely starts with
Yeah.
leadership.
I'm talking about the business, being enthused
Yeah.
about business. It starts from the top and then it trickles down kind of.
Right, if you develop a antitrust type of environment or a non-supportive environment, then businesses are gonna look at the town of Pepperell and say, why would I wanna go there?
Exactly.
Why would I wanna go there? Because these people aren't open, they're not welcoming, they really don't want my business. So how, are they gonna help me? No, okay, and so we're, you know, we kinda walk that line now, you know, with, you know, 161.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I'm an advocate of 161 at all, but we walk that line because that's a business who's trying to, you know, the guy already owns the property, but you've got this outside interest trying to come in to do that. Now, here it's different because it's a complete environmental issue from our perspective and it doesn't meet our zoning. So from that perspective, yeah, it is the board's responsibility to say, okay, you know,
Yep.
this is not right for this town. So we have to, the board has to then, you know, be upfront about those type of things and say, yes or no, this makes sense for the town or it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, very
Now,
good.
we're not open to every business, okay? We are open to the ones that make sense here, okay? And so that's the question is, what are those businesses? And that's where your Economic Development Committee comes in. They've done a lot of work in the past relative to what kind of business we should bring in. The Master Plan Committee, when they're all done with their plan, they'll have other things that say we should be looking for more retail as an example, or that we may look for something in the, you know, medical industry, or, you know, so they'll come back with, these are areas we feel would be great industries for us to have in this town.
So having been on the board, the PBA, what do you think great businesses coming to the town would be?
Retail.
Okay.
We definitely need more retail, but when I say retail, I'm not talking about, let's go get a big chain.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see us develop, you know, what is our retail area, Railroad Square, into something that's different than what it is today. I mean, I always had a vision that you could change that whole section. You know, if right now, if you come across the bridge, the road goes to the left to bring you into Rural Square. Well, if we just let the road go straight and bring it out so it's directly across from, what is it, Tarbell?
Mm-hmm.
And then take that existing area and turn it into a parking and you know, do the whole facades of the buildings and make it into an attractive retail area, add some more, hopefully some more businesses along that new stretch of road. There's lots of things that we could do in that area. And then, you know, we do have an industrial park. We have other land that we can use for industrial. So we have opportunities to bring in other types of, you know, distribution, warehouses. You can see it with Pepperell Place. They've taken this 190,000 square feet building and it's pretty much full. I know they still have some space available, but they've gone out and cut it up into small places and now it's full of businesses. That helps.
So you're still gonna be involved, even though you're
I
off
still
this
have a
with
business
the-
in town, I
Okay.
still have other things, I'm
Yeah.
still involved with Patch and, you know,
Good.
so, yeah, I still will be
Good.
involved.
You're not done? No,
No, I'm
okay.
just not here, not in this
Okay.
position, so.
How do you feel about a 5-member board?
I think it's essential nowadays because, you know, a 3-member board's difficult when someone gets on the board that has a personal agenda.
Yeah.
Okay, that personal agenda then derails the board. I feel that we really haven't been as productive of a board over the last year and a half as we could have been.
In all areas, in one area?
Well, primarily in, you know, you think about economic development, you know, if we look back at what we've done over the last, you know, year and a half, you know, 161's been our biggest thing,
Mm-hmm.
okay? We really haven't done anything with
Taking
economic
a long
development.
time.
No, it really hasn't
Oh, it
taken up a
hasn't?
lot of time.
Oh,
I mean,
seems like it.
well, that's
Yeah.
because, you know, you've got this hysteria out there on it.
Uh-huh.
There's things that are being done and we're doing that, but if you look back and say, okay, you know, there's a lot of board meetings, we didn't talk about 161 because there was nothing new to talk about. You know, well, we've got our attorneys working on it, there's really not a lot going on in that area, okay? But there's just been other things that have been, you know,
What's the hysteria?
yeah,
What do you mean by
exactly.
that?
People would rather than having solutions to problems, we're gonna just talk about problems.
Right.
We're gonna
Or
create
possibility problems.
Let's,
possible
you know,
things.
rather than let's go ahead and, you know, I come from the world where if you identify a problem, you need to come with a solution. Okay? So that you can start the conversation about how do we move the ball forward. I don't think we've been doing that. I think we've been identifying, oh, we got a problem here, problem here, problem here, problem. And in a lot of cases, those problems really aren't really problems. They're just somebody's opinion,
Right.
okay?
It
And
seems like there's some scare tactics
Right.
involved.
And, you know, and of course, social media plays into this whole thing about,
Right.
I heard it on social media, so it's gotta be true,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's really a situation where you want, you know, if you're gonna come forward with a problem, come forward with a recommendation or potential solution for that problem, and then we can all talk about it and move the ball forward.
The all talking about it is really what seems to me to be done with 161, because I honestly think, and I've said this, Dave Burton's lived here all his life. I just can't believe that he would want to literally ship toxic dirt here. So somewhere, from my point of view, there needs to be some conversation to come to a solution. But it just, the town seems to be at a standstill, and I
Well,
think Dave
it-
must feel like an outcast.
It's at a standstill because everybody thinks it's toxic,
Well-
what's coming in.
The problem is that when you go and look at what's happened out there across the state,
There has been.
there have
problems.
been problems across every single
Right.
one of them. Now, by no means am I an expert in that area, but, you know, we rely on the DEP to pretty much build all these things out to say, okay, here's what's safe and what's not. But when you have a group coming in that wants to dump more dirt in that spot than was there originally, well, first of all, the whole concept of this is supposed to be reclamation. Well, the concept of reclamation is that you dig a hole, you don't want to have sharp walls So if someone's on the top,
Mm-hmm.
slips and falls,
Mhm.
you're gonna get hurt. So you want to say, okay, we're gonna do a reclamation project of this hole, and it should have a drop, I think it's for every 1 foot down, it's gotta have a 3 foot slope to it, so that if someone does trip, they're gonna roll down, but they're not gonna get hurt. So that is not this whole thing of, oh, we're gonna build this hill that's going to be 100 and X number of feet higher than the surrounding terrain,
Mm-hmm.
more than what was there originally. No, that's not reclamation. That's disposal, okay? Yes, it's unwanted dirt because it came out of the ground somewhere where somebody had another construction project, like the wind.
Mm-hmm.
And like, we have to dig a big foundation, so we have to take all this dirt out. Now, where's it gonna go? I don't know, where can we ship it to, okay? And that's how this happens, so you have especially when you have the economic engine that's driving this state, as strong as it is, and you've got all this construction going on, there's a lot of dirt that needs to find a home.
Yeah, that was actually one of my questions. Do you think the State House fell through on their, letting towns know about this coming down the road? Like
Like we had no
the
warning.
Reclamation Act,
The
it
law
just seems
passed
to have
and
passed,
Well, it's
and
just
then
not-
they're
it's not-
picking out towns and.
It's
I
not
mean-
really a law, it's
well,
a
it's an
regulation,
actual regulation.
it's a regulation
an
that's
act.
been
passed.
put in place by a department, the DEP.
Mhm.
So it's not a law that the state has.
Well, it did start
But
off
if it's
as
a
a
regulation that
Reclamation
affected-
Act, and they took
affected
it to
this
the
town.
DEP.
Okay, but
And it
that's not,
started in Boston.
Right,
But my
okay.
point is, the State House, Beacon Hill did sort of know about this, it progressed. So was there some communication that our state reps could have let towns know that had quarries, that this might be coming down the pike? It just seems to have been a surprise.
it's only a surprise because there is such a demand to get rid of this dirt. So you look at Terra, they're nothing more than a dirt broker.
Mm-hmm.
So, Sandy, you got a project, you got all this extra dirt.
Yeah.
I'll take that dirt off your hand, you gotta pay me X amount, and then, Kathy, you have this hole in the ground.
Yeah, and I want $16 million.
I'll pay you to
Yeah,
take this
yeah.
dirt.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not gonna be that I'm getting paid from Sandy,
Yeah,
but I'll pay you to fill it,
Yeah.
and that way I get to put the rest of the money in my pocket.
yeah.
You gotta pay for all the, doing all
Yeah.
the work there, but, yeah, I mean, so it's kind of, should the state have known? Well, the state knew about it, and should they have told us? Should our reps have told us? Probably, but it's one of these things that they may have, but until you get to that situation where someone's knocking on your door saying, I wanna dump a bunch of dirt here, who's gonna really know about it? That's why when you look at our zoning bylaws, it's pretty clear. Sorry about that, I
That's
should have put
okay.
this on mute
No, that's
before.
all right.
It's pretty clear that we should have,
It's uncensored, Roland.
Yeah,
Natural is
all right,
there we
best.
go, yeah. It's pretty clear that, we wanted to protect ourselves, so we have certain things in our bylaws. I would venture to say that what we do have in our bylaws have come from the fact that there have been laws passed in the state that says you can do A, B, and C.
Okay.
Okay, but there again, where do our bylaws come from? Come from a part-time board, elected board of people who are doing this on a part-time basis. So are we gonna be current on a lot of things? No, we're not gonna be current on a lot of things, okay? So you look at, right, you look at who we have, working upstairs, you've got your conservation agent, okay, you got a planning board agent, and you got a building inspector, so you're relying on those three people to stay on top of everything for us, okay? And then put forth bylaws that say, okay, this is how we're gonna protect ourselves, okay? What we see here is pretty common where something comes along that seems like it can slip through the cracks, and now we're running to try to instill new zoning bylaws that would, patch those cracks.
Would it be more beneficial to hire a city planner? City planner or someone who gets paid to, keep an eye on those things? Work
We
with
have
policy?
a planner,
Yeah,
we have a planner now, she's part-time.
okay, part-time.
And she's got very good credentials, and
Okay,
so she's kind of doing that, and that's what we've had,
mm-hmm,
okay? But even when this project came about, they came in and met with the TA and our planner at the time, who told them, no, you can't do this.
Okay.
Okay, unfortunately, people in town said, we don't believe you. Well,
You can't do what, fill in the quarry?
yeah, this is not a viable project.
Mhm.
So, when people told this is what transpired, and they still want to create this, you're creating some kind of backroom deal, it's like, hey, we told you everything, you just don't believe what we told you, so in that case, but the town has always been, this is not acceptable under our zoning bylaws. Okay, you cannot do this, and they're trying to hang their hat on reclamation. Well, the reclamation, as I described it, would have been just to take and reduce the slopes so that they're safe, so no one's going to fall off a cliff and get hurt.
Yeah, they can't do it according to our zoning bylaws.
Correct.
But they did, because then they had to go to the zoning board of appeals.
No, we asked the zoning agent, which is their building inspector, for determination. And he said that, no, this is not acceptable because it's commercial dumping. Okay? The group then appealed that position of the zoning officer.
Yep.
And the ZBA said, no, this is not commercial dumping. That's why the board then said, no, we're gonna fight this in court, because go back to the scenario. If you're paying me to take something so I can dump it over here, okay,
Yeah.
and I've gotta pay Kathy to take it,
Yeah.
it is commercial dumping by definition. Someone's getting money paid to them so they can dump it there. So I just.
So why didn't Bob Kelly present it like that, and why was the zoning board of appeals, why did they say, and now there's a lawsuit?
You have to talk to the zoning board of appeals.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't get the town suing the town.
Well, we have to in this case because it's part of the whole process that protects us to say, okay, it is commercial dumping from my perspective, okay? So now of course they'll have to tell us if it's not, but by every definition of commercial dumping, it certainly, from my opinion, fits that. Someone's paying someone else to take something to dump it somewhere else.
But that's the regulation that says you can do that.
Our
That was
regulation
written in
says,
Boston.
our regulation says you cannot do
can't do
commercial
that.
dumping in the town of Pepperell, okay?
And that would overrule the state.
The locals' bylaws overrule
the
that.
state.
So say he did it without an ACO or the DEP's approval, he just went ahead and do it. So could Pepperell go in and shut him down based on those regulations, just go,
Yes,
you've gotta shut
yes.
down? So maybe that's
That's exactly
Yeah.
why,
just do that.
we don't want him to start because
Yeah.
the reason he wants to do an ACO is because that way he's somewhat protected himself. If he just comes in and starts dumping, we would do a cease and desist on the project because it doesn't meet our zoning bylaws. Therefore, you can't be doing this. Now he's responsible for taking everything back out. Okay, so that's why we definitely feel that we have our strength is in the zoning issue right now.
That it's commercial
Okay.
dumping.
And then, of course, there's the other, the wetlands, the river, protection of our aquifer and all those other things that we need to be concerned about.
Is that the only way he can develop that land is by filling in the quarry? Or can
No.
he could do it a different way?
You can always do it a different way.
Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know, I don't know what it
I
looks
mean-
like out there.
You can just change the topography and reduce it all down to one level. It's more expensive than just dumping dirt in there.
And he wouldn't make any money from it.
You probably wouldn't get his return on it. I don't know,
Yeah.
how much rock is in it, because from what I've been told, most of it was taken out, it was sand.
Yeah,
That was then used in Logan, so it can't be that.
so has anyone from the town talked to him about different ways to develop
When
it?
they came in
Yeah.
back
Was he
then,
open to any of it?
we're like, why would you do that? That's not acceptable. Why don't you look at putting in a
And
sports
was he
field?
open to that?
Apparently not, because
No.
here we are today having
Yeah,
this
so
conversation.
No way.
It's a lot of money at
I
stake
know,
here, and that's
I know,
probably
yeah,
why he
yeah,
wasn't open
He's-
to that.
Yeah. And the lawyers are hanging in there with him, which makes me think
Well,
it's a good possibility it's gonna happen.
So
I
the
don't know.
ACO protects him.
the ACO would protect him from the perspective of, the way the ACO agreement is that the town would have to say, yes, we'll be a host
Right.
community for that. And for being a host community, you're gonna do A, B, C, D, and E, okay?
Mhm.
So there is an agreement between the state,
Mhm.
the landowner, we'll call it the reclamation center facility, and the town, okay? So yes, he's protected, but that doesn't protect him if he starts bringing in toxic dirt, because that's not covered in the ACO,
Right.
okay? And then the whole question of monitoring, it's a lot of money,
Yeah,
okay, it's very expensive. I mean, the town would want their own on-site professional monitoring everything,
daily.
yeah, and taking samples and, you know, testing it to validate that this is what you say it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Now, the state isn't going to let them bring
Mhm.
toxic dirt in, but unfortunately, when you look at all the sites that are out there today, just because the state says you're not going to,
I know.
doesn't prevent it from happening, and then you get into this big legal battle about, boom, we gotta take it out of here.
So if our regs overrule the states, to me, it just seems pretty obvious that there is no discussion, whether he starts and there's a cease and desist, or, you know, you're already talking to the DEP, there's our rules and regulations, they should say no.
The DEP should say no,
DEP,
but
yeah,
that's why they
Yeah.
go in ACO, because if the host town creates a host agreement, then they still would have the problem if their zoning bylaw zoning doesn't allow it, they'd have to go for a special permit.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
so we're a long ways away from having this thing resolved,
Yeah, you are,
Yeah.
oh, we are,
we as a town,
we
yeah.
as a town,
Yeah.
it's kind of a, well, conundrum,
It is a conundrum,
yeah, it is,
you know, so I mean, if I were in Mr. Burton's shoes, I would say, okay, this is what we wanna do, we wanna develop this property, we're gonna put housing in here, or something like that, which, you know, no one's gonna put toxic dirt in ground that they're gonna put houses on,
Mhm.
because it's gonna come back to them anyways.
Yep.
So, that would be one way that he could, or they could say, yeah, no, we're serious about this, we really are gonna make sure this is done right. But that's not what the proposal we see,
No,
so,
no, it's,
so we'll have to wait.
Do you
and see.
think the toxic soil, no toxic soil signs are a good idea or a bad idea to have them out?
They're a bad idea,
Okay, so do I.
because they create a negative image
Right.
about the town, you know,
Right.
no toxic dirt, well,
Right.
of course we don't want any toxic
Who
dirt.
does? Yeah.
Okay, nobody does, but it's a political thing, it's about creating, you know, this hysteria that get people all up to support the
Yeah.
position. That I understand, but at some point,
no, I don't understand.
Yeah,
We've
people
got-
driving through town looking for a
right,
house,
but we've got,
not gonna see that.
we're taking action already,
Mhm.
so, you know, I would advocate they take the signs down,
Okay.
okay? Because people are trying to sell houses in this town. So-
I would advocate, we support our town and BOS as signs. No, I don't know, that would, if I was looking for a house, that might be more
No
inviting,
signs.
Yeah,
that might be, that,
it also doesn't help their property value.
well,
No.
no, that's where we're going
Yeah,
with this
you know,
question, yeah.
My
Because-
first question when driving through town, would be, what are they talking about? Toxic
Right.
soil.
Right, because, you know, people coming into this town from outside are not going to be up to date on
No.
what the conversation is,
Mhm.
okay? You hope that people would look at, you know, go on the website and start reviewing that, but reality is, how do you buy a house? You look at, okay, how long do I wanna commute?
Yeah.
How much do I wanna spend? Does it have good schools?
Yeah.
That's what they're gonna be looking at, okay? So then they look at that, but then they come to look at property and they see these no toxic dirt signs, and they're like, whoa, what is this about this town?
Yeah.
That's,
Turn
they
on
move
some.
on to the next town,
Right.
that's what anybody would do.
They'll go
Would
to,
make it an
they'll go-
issue to
yeah.
even take on.
But, I mean, everybody has their right to,
Yeah,
Well, they
sure.
do,
Voice
of
their
course,
opinion.
that's fine,
and, you know, but they have to also understand that that does have consequences to the
it
town.
does, yeah, it does. You wanna talk about the budget, will you follow
Sure.
the override and,
Well, the budget, to me, is the biggest challenge this next board has. It's been a challenge for this town for the last 5 years. In 2015, there was a informational pamphlet put out by the finance committee then that said, because we were looking for an override then, that said if we don't do an override by 2019, we're gonna have a structural deficit of, guess what? $1.4 million.
Yeah.
And that's what we have today. And I really think the reason that, we've been fortunate over the last 4 years in that we've been able to collect a lot of back taxes, so that's kind of pushed that off. Otherwise, we would have had this problem maybe last year, the
They've
year
done a good
before.
job of collecting taxes.
So I think we've been fortunate there. But the reality is, if the townspeople do not vote this override in, next year it's gonna be worse. So we are at the very tipping point, and we've known this for 5 years. We've known that, okay, with the fact that we can only raise 2.5%, the schools keep coming in at 5 and 6%, which takes up all of our growth and then some. And then, so what have we been doing? We've been cutting departments. We can no longer do that. You're talking about, we're gonna lay off, I think it's 4 people this year. And you just don't have any more people. So, I equate that to the fact that, okay, you look at the town hall, you have departments upstairs that have 2 people, some have, 2.5, some have 1. Well, you start letting those people go, you're not going to have that work done. You just cannot do it, because there's nobody to do it.
You can't cut your way to prosperity.
You can't cut your way to
I love that
prosperity.
saying. I have to find out who said that on the finance committee, because it was a great statement.
But you can't cut, right,
You can't.
and we've been cutting and cutting, and there's nothing left. I mean, you look, we decimated our DPW, okay? And it's amazing that we, get the service, from them that we get, because, we just did the ramp out here, that did a great job.
Yeah.
But you just can't, like, we're talking about, we have no capital this year, we have no reserve account. So if there's anything that's out of the ordinary, they'll have to go to town meeting to try to appropriate the money. We have no free cash left. And we're spending, 600,000 of that this year. And it looks like before the town meeting starts and we do that, pay any prior bills, we're gonna burn a couple 100,000 more. And out of the 900 we have right now, so when we're all done, it's gonna be like $100,000.
If the override passes, does the 600,000 stay in free cash?
The 600,000 stays in free cash. We reinstate the people that we've lost. Our capital fund gets put back to where it was, so we can now fix roads, because there won't be any road, maybe some patching, but there won't be any plan to, okay, let's put a whole new, repavement on this particular road and fixing these problems. There won't be that.
Do you remember in 2015 what the vote was? How much did it fail?
I don't remember how much it failed by.
What do you feel about this vote?
Well, my concern is, we always have to put forth a balanced budget, so we did that, okay?
With the cuts and everything.
With the cuts.
And you
So
think
originally, there was 8 people we were cutting. There was a fireman, a policeman, a couple from DEP, and then some throughout the town hall. We were able to put the firemen and policemen back, but it cost us all our free cash, not our free cash, it cost us all of our reserve account, it cost us most of our capital account. We're going to spend 600,000, so there, and a lot of people can look at that and say, well, see, they don't need an override, they kept all these services. Well, we kept the police, we kept the fire, but the DPW took a hit. The other town departments are taking hits. Are they as visible? No. But they're still critical to the success of this town.
Will there be any more marketing or information out to the public trying to get them to persuade them to vote for the override?
Well, I know that Andrew has actually
It's been
been
online.
online.
He's
It's
done a lot.
It's very good
Live
information.
videos.
He's been doing videos and stuff like that, informational pieces. I would expect that the next board will continue to do that.
We'll have signage.
I hope people have signs for that. I hope people have signs for that.
And the school did cut a fairly
Oh,
good
yeah,
amount.
the school did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
they
you know,
did cut this year,
Did-
was it enough?
Not for us, it wasn't enough.
Yeah,
Not for us, it wasn't enough.
yeah,
You know, and well, you know, the school's a challenging part because there's so many moving parts to it.
Mhm.
You know, our enrollment has gone down over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Our assessment hasn't gone down at all. But the way the state looks at that, they look at the towns, 3 towns, and say, okay, Pepperell, you're the more affluent town of the 3, you get to pay a bigger portion of that.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's like, you know, every dollar we bring in, it's like, I think it's 67 cents is going to the school,
Yeah.
you know.
We were talking about that with Tom Casey, that
Yep.
we interviewed
Yep.
him, he's running the school committee.
So it's, you know, we won't, don't wanna knock the schools, cause the
No.
schools are
Yeah,
important, they're
yeah.
important.
Roland, it's not
Education.
knocking them.
Yeah, I know.
It's
no.
being,
Realistic.
realistic, and if you're a community, you really have to play fair.
Oh, I agree.
You cannot, whether you need that money or not, kids are important, but there are other aspects to a town that are also important. So
Exactly.
year after year, if you're not gonna play fair, it catches up with the
Yeah.
town, and it caught up with us this year,
Yeah.
if not last year.
Well, it's been
So
catching
that's-
up, but we've been able to
I'm not dissing the
balance it,
schools,
yeah.
and I
No,
don't
no,
think
and I
people
didn't take,
who talk like me are, that's not the
It-
point.
really, if we
But I've
didn't
heard you
have,
say the same thing.
yeah, if we didn't have a regional school district, so the school was within our own budget, okay? Well, then they would be locked in the same constraints of 2.5%,
Mm-hmm.
okay? We would, okay, you can only grow by this much because this is all the money we
Mhm.
have. Once they became a regional, they're not locked into those constraints. So I mean, you can look at the schools and say, okay, you have all these clinicians, you have all these new people, you keep adding staff when towns have to reduce their staff. Okay, so you wanna, you know, you wanna build a collaborative environment where they say, really, do we need this new staff or not? Okay, what is it really going to do? Can we reposition someone else into a different role,
Right.
maybe?
Yeah.
So, you know, the school has been working closely with us. Have they always given us what we want? No, very rarely do we get what we want when it comes to the budget. Because they have a different, you know, charter, basically. You know, that their responsibility is, we need to educate these students. Well, yeah, but you also have to understand that there's only so much money coming in. You know,
The
the
state
state,
dictates a lot
the
too,
state-
and the
yeah,
state gives
the
money
state-
to the towns, and the towns have
yeah,
to do
the
what the
state,
state
the
says.
state gives us, you know, take transportation as an example.
Yeah, that's,
Empty school buses.
State,
that's,
you know, mandates that we have to have
Every
all
city.
these buses, but PACE is only 70% of the cost. All right, so what, that means that we're paying 30% of that. And since we are the more affluent town of the district, we're paying 70% of the district's cost. Not 70% of the cost to transport our kids. We're paying, or not 70, 30% of the district's cost. So,
Every time.
yeah, so, you know, it gets spread across the whole district. So, and that's the way the formulas work, unfortunately.
so in the end, is regionalization good for a town or bad?
In the end, it is good. And the reason it's good is because you've got more money coming into the pie. Okay, so if you were to pull it back and say, okay, if this was all in town, all right, well, that means we'd have to have our own high school, our own middle school. Well, we have a new middle school, but okay, that belongs to the
Education
your own
department,
special
everything.
education department, all these other
School
things,
buses.
which we really couldn't afford. So, I mean, we're having a tough time maintaining what we have, let alone now maintaining school buildings. So, the whole thing of having a whole bunch of people trying to fund it
Mm-hmm.
is better than just us trying to fund it ourselves. But there's just need to have more collaboration between the two.
I think I'm done with the questions. My last question was simple. What makes Pepperell a great community?
Well, Pepperell is a very interesting community, and it's a great community because there are a lot of involvement in, call it charitable organizations, okay? You know, where people come together to do what is right for the community, okay? You know, whether it be, you know, the Scouts or, any of those type of organizations, Patch, you know, youth sports, and just Santa Fun, you know, the band concerts. That's all done by volunteers.
Senior center. there's a
So,
lot of volunteers.
Yeah, the senior center could not
Yeah.
run without
No,
volunteers.
no.
Okay. So when you look at it across the board, we have volunteers doing
A lot of
everything.
work,
you know, a lot of things. Yeah, and for all different age groups,
Mhm.
so across the whole gamut of our population. That says we have a community that's engaged, okay? Could we have more people engaged? Yes, and that's always a challenge in every town, is what I call the silent majority. You know, you hear from the vocal minority will come in, they'll talk to you and they'll give you their opinions, where a lot of people don't. You know, when you talk about we're about 12,000 people, but yet, when you go to vote, how many people go to vote?
Yeah.
Very small percentage.
Yeah.
Town meeting, how many people show up at town meeting?
200 or so.
Yeah, a couple
Yeah.
hundred.
Yeah.
I think last one was 300, but 300 people are deciding the budget. Okay, deciding where your tax dollars are going to go for 12,000.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's not, it doesn't, to me, it's like, do you really want that? We have a country where this is the best form of government.
Yeah, it is.
Everybody has the opportunity to cast their vote, to make their opinion heard. But
Why
have
wouldn't
we
you take
become,
advantage of
yeah,
it? Why
have we
wouldn't you do it?
become
Yeah.
lazy,
Apathetic.
complacent? I don't know. You know, and I get, you know, oh, I commute all day. Heck, I commuted an hour and 20 minutes each way for 10 years. And I still voted, I still was active in my community, you know, so, I you know, raised a family, got my education at night, so, I mean, it's just, how much does an individual really say, yeah, you know what, this is not just a place I sleep, this is my community, this is my home,
I'm invested.
this is, exactly, I'm invested in it, and that's the challenge we have, trying to get more people to be that way. Because we've got a great town,
Yeah, we do, yeah.
That's why we're doing that.
it's a great town.
So you can add more. Do you have any other questions?
No, I think that's
Because I
it.
think we covered everything.
Yeah.
So you can sum it up, say whatever you like.
Well, I mean, I just want to thank the voters of the town of Pepperell for allowing me the opportunity to serve them.
We thank you.
You know, and,
Yeah.
well, thank you, and, I just hope that we have an override that's successful, because we need that override in order for this town to continue to be the great town that it is.
Hey, can you give any advice to the next select person?
The select person, whoever, well, this is advice I give to all selectmen. When you sit up here, there are a group of people who put you here, but you're not here just to represent them. You're here to represent the 12,000 people in this town. So when you're making decisions, you should be looking at what is the best thing for those 12,000 people. Not for 200 people, not for 50 people, not for 5 people, but for 12,000, okay? And that's a good way to govern, okay? And then, I talked about this earlier, when you identify a problem, what's the solution, okay? You bring recommendations so that you can move the ball forward. It's easy to point fingers, it's easy to say, this is broke, that's broke, this is that. But if you're not putting forth any effort with a solution to help, what is it accomplishing? Nothing.
You really just have to start. Even if that first solution doesn't work, you kind of find different
Well,
solutions
it
as
becomes-
you move along.
It becomes the kernel that sprouts into
Right.
some other
Right.
idea that says, this is how we can
Yeah.
solve this problem.
Yeah.
Okay, collectively, we can solve any problem, but it's collectively. We have to do it together.
That's a great way to end.
That's good.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Roland.
Very
Thanks.
good.
You're welcome.
Thank you so
Great.
much.
It was very good. Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you, thank you.
Sandy?
Yeah, thank you.